The nice guys apologize for any inconvenience that this podcast has caused anyone. By the way, is there anyone listening who knows how to fly a plane? Need an education on how to grow your business? The nice guys are here to help. Learn about great customer service, networking, and how just being nice can help you prosper. Now, here are your hosts, Doug Sandler and Strickland Bonner.
Hey, nice guy community. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Strickland Bonner on this side.
You sound so calm. You sound so calm.
Well, I do. I sound a little calmer than normal for those of you who are normal listeners. And that's because our guest today, Mr. Tim J.P. Collins, he is all about anxiety, or really avoiding anxiety. I mean, nobody's trying to get more anxiety.
No. The last thing I want is any more anxiety in my life. I can remember going back to September of 15, and I think the actual date was September 9th. That's how vivid it remains in my mind. I was coming home from an MPI meeting, and I actually experienced what I would consider was my first, I guess, anxiety attack or panic attack. And when I went to therapy later on, they said we can't understand, or I can't understand, Doug, how you've gotten to 51 years and not had an anxiety attack with the amount of pressure that you put on yourself. And it's probably true. So Tim J.P. Collins does a great job. He is our guest today on the show, and he does a really good job of helping me get not just some clarity and understanding, but the 3 C's: curiosity, courage, and compassion. How to put those in your life when it comes to anxiety. Great job on the podcast today. He has a podcast too, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's called Anxiety Podcast, and I don't know what episode he's on. Episode 165. So he's got a lot too. He's been doing it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very well experienced, well seasoned in the world of anxiety because I think, if I remember correctly, he actually steps through, and I apologize for not remembering correctly, but sometimes the interviews, I do them, and then it takes us a while to record, like this interview right now. But I'm pretty sure he actually walks through an explanation of an anxiety attack that he had while in front of an audience.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty scary. And if I am wrong, then it's creating a little bit more anxiety. I can already feel my palms getting sweaty just talking about this show.
Well, he has the Anxiety Journal, the Anxiety Podcast, and his own company. He's a speaker. He is a coach. He does a little bit of everything. And we ought to get to the promise statement and then just roll right on in.
All right. So the Nice Guys on Business promise statement, I have it right here. Our goal is period. Hold us to that standard. If we don't completely meet that standard, please reach out to us. The best way to do that is on Twitter at DJ Doug is my handle. Strickland, that guy over there, the better looking of the two of us, at Nice Guy on Biz, that is with a Z. So make sure you reach out to us. Please let us know. If you have not had a chance recently to record or to rate the or to, what's it called? Review. I don't know if it's called a review. Recommend. Yeah. Thank you, Strickland. You know, it's early as of the recording of this podcast, so it's really challenging for me to remember those big words like recommend. If you haven't had a chance to recommend our show recently, please, we know you're listening on Overcast. Most of you are. Just hit on the cover art right behind that. There's a little button that's got a star. What's interesting about it is if you can just pause this episode just for a moment. You probably have not done that for maybe the last 5 or 10 episodes. Can you go back and do all of those as well? We got to get back to that number 3 spot, and the way for us to do that is to have you help us do it just by hitting the little recommend button. So it's a little star. You can't miss it. Don't do it twice, because then you'll unrecommend the show if you do it twice.
All right, we got to kick NPR's ass.
Oh, geez. How crazy would that be?
It would be crazy.
Is this American
clearly,
life?
We've been in the number 3 slot, so we've been ahead of a number of NPR shows for a long time, but now we've slipped behind 2 of them.
I don't think it's fair that NPR has like 20 shows.
I know, right?
They have too many. And don't you think at some point they would reach out to us and say, hey, Doug, hey, Strick, we really want you as NPR. Would we do it?
I think we curse too much.
No, they don't.
I don't know. They always seem, isn't NPR usually kind of hoity-toity and sort of nose in the air and very prim and proper? I mean, I haven't actually listened to any of their podcasts, so I can't say that for sure.
They might actually be good. Maybe we should listen to them and recommend their show.
Yeah, but then they might beat us. No, we won't do that.
No, I don't want to do that.
And the other thing is, I don't think they pay anything. You know, you're not allowed to have a sponsor if you're on NPR. Of course, we do have that in common. right now. No
right,
sponsors. Yeah.
But ours is completely because we are sabotaging ourselves.
Ours is unintentional, yes.
Yeah, unintentional self-sabotage. And speaking of self-sabotage, let's get to our interview about anxiety and self-sabotage with Tim J.P. Collins right here on the Nice Guys on Business podcast. This is going to be totally cool today, relatable and scary. Tim J.P. Collins has a huge problem, but he sees it as a gift. How many of you listening right now have some level of anxiety? I mean, I know I do. Sweaty palms, heart racing, tingling arm, heart attack symptoms or panic attack, that stuff. So how can you turn this total fuckery into a gift? Well, Tim J.P. Collins is here to help. Podcaster, author, and all-around good guy with anxiety. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast, Tim.
Thank you for having me, Doug. That was a fabulous introduction.
I just want to be sure, for the record, is that the first time that the word fuckery has ever been used in an intro of you?
It is, yeah. Nobody's ever used fuckery before. I've heard the term loosely used, but that's a good way to start.
Well, where I first heard that? I heard it from Amy Winehouse. I think she actually sings it in a song or something like that. So I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. I was reading your blog. Well done, by the way, Tim. So thank you for putting out so much great information, and you get so real. Like I'm right there with you, and you're talking to me about my problems, and I feel like everything. And I know from a writing perspective, it's very challenging to connect directly to one reader or one listener if you're a podcast. I mean, we all deal with traffic, money, time management, all things that are like total crap in my day. Tell the Nice Guy community a little bit about your story so that we have a level of understanding on who you are and how you got here where you are today.
Yeah, so and it could be a long story or a shorter one. So just cut me off if I'm if I'm fuckerying around too much.
There you go. Nice.
So I started off what I think is on a very traditional path, kind of like, etched by society and my parents. I was striving for money and fame in terms of, I wanted fancy business cards. I wanted to have the big house. I wanted to have career progression. And that's all the things I was going for every time I got promoted. Looking back, I didn't pause to celebrate. I just said, right, what's the next step in the ladder? And I just kind of went on from there. And so it was, fairly exciting times. Some of the time, it was the early sort of internet boom at the end of the 90s and early noughties, I guess you say.
Yeah.
So I was heavily sort of on that train. And I think I'd always been a sensitive person, but I sort of buried it with masks is the best way I would put it. So, I was always, pretending to be confident and pretending to be this outgoing person because I just assimilated to my environment, as you do, to kind of fit in. And everything was seemingly fine. I had no reason to question my life because everybody else kept telling me how great it was. So I just kept going along with it and thinking, right, I'm making a lot of money. I got a beautiful wife. I got healthy children. What else do you want, Tim? Like that should suffice. And gradually, I was in IT sales and management for about 15 years. And towards the end, I started to feel off. That's the only way I can put it. Initially, it was just a mild offness. And, all of this stuff caught up with me. I was traveling a lot internationally. I was drinking a lot because I was entertaining clients, and that was a good excuse to drink a lot. Eating a lot of crappy food. And so
you're naming by the way, you're saying my entire life story right now, just so you know. I mean, everything you've said, I'm like, yes, checking that off the list. Yes. Okay, keep going. Yeah, and I had this like amazing concept in my mind that I could maintain the shit lifestyle, but also get in shape at the same time. So I'd work out at lunchtime sometimes, not very often, and think, right, if I work out really hard, then I can drink a bottle of wine at night and eat the food, and I'll be able to get in shape. But now I know that's ridiculous. It doesn't happen that way. And eventually, so to kind of cut to the chase, enough neglect over a big enough, kind of part of time, a big enough amount of time, big enough neglect of all of those feelings and all of those emotions that were going on within me. One day I'd flown. I kind of created the perfect storm for a meltdown, as I would say. So I'd flown internationally, I'd gone out drinking, got up in the morning, did my usual double espresso, jumped up on stage to give a presentation about the business I was working for at the time. Yeah.
And I had a live in-person panic attack.
Oh, my God.
And Yeah, and just my whole world sort of imploded at that moment.
So are you literally on stage and having this panic attack in front of whatever amount of people you were presenting to?
Yes. Yeah. It was like, I mean, what happened, I kind of had my PowerPoint up because that was my beautiful crutch.
Yep.
And I turned around to the PowerPoint and started just trying to introduce the company and say where we were based and how many employees we had. And I just couldn't, my throat swelled shut. Like I couldn't speak. Nothing came out.
Is this? And I'm trying to remember part of your story because I think I was watching you on either a YouTube video or something explain this. Did you actually leave the room, go to the bathroom, and somebody say, "Hey, you're supposed to be presenting"? Did that happen to you?
Yeah. So I'll tell you in a little bit more detail because it's a bit amusing in hindsight. But so my throat's well shut. I can't talk. All these people are staring at me. I'm feeling like Eminem in 8 Mile and just nothing coming out. And I started to sweat and started to shake. And I thought at that point, anxiety wasn't really on my radar. So I thought I was having a heart attack. Yeah. So I just sort of, I felt like I ran out of the room, but I probably just walked out of the room. And I walked out to the guy who'd brought me in to do the presentation. I said, "Can I borrow your key card to go to the restroom?" Because I was in a high security IT building, so I couldn't actually escape, which made it a bit
which
worse.
may even heighten the anxiety even more.
Just running into fire exits. But yeah, so he gave me the key card. I go into the bathroom and splash water on my face, and I'm trying to I'm basically saying, "What the fuck's going on? What's wrong with you?" And then at the same time, I got this other track playing in my head, which is like, all those people are just sat there wondering what's wrong with you. And that just added even more pressure. But eventually I went back into the room, and now I look back on this part of the story with a bit of, a lot of empathy and bravery in terms of what I did, because I went back in there and I did the presentation. I just said, "Look, there's something wrong with me at this point. I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to sit down and do this presentation." So I sat down at the front of the room and scraped through it with every fiber of my body. I just about scraped through it. And that was the beginning of the end for me. That was the beginning of my anxious period, where I basically had to take a look at my life and question the path I was on. And until that point, I had no need to question the path I was on. I was just going through the motions.
And totally relatable story. We actually had a guy named Dan Harris. He's an ABC news anchor that was on the show, and he had his first anxiety attack actually live in front of millions of people. And so from a relatability standpoint, very, very challenging, probably very similar to you. It doesn't matter whether you're in front of millions or just in front of 2 other people. It's embarrassing, and you just don't know how to deal with it. I mean, anxiety, when I had my first panic attack or anxiety attack or whatever, however you want to label it, I mean, it's fucking scary. And so help our listeners go through the passage of, okay, so you're there and you get beyond that day, as we all get beyond that first attack, and we all think it's something other than, wow, what happened? Did I have a heart attack? Did I have a stroke? What happened? How did you learn to cope with it? Because there's not a cure to it. You just learn how to manage it properly. Or maybe I'm wrong. Tell me how you learned to cope with it.
Yeah, so I went through a lot of, I think, like a kind of dam of emotion was built up inside me, and that was the release point. I literally was crying on my hotel bed by the end of that day because I just didn't. I was just totally helpless. But
like that first 2 months, I was like crying every day. My wife is like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I have no idea why I'm even crying. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It is that dam open. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it's just the suppressed or repressed emotion that you've been basically faking it. The whole concept of fake it till you make it. Like, no, because it's coming at a cost. And what I've come to learn, what I've come to believe is that anxiety for a lot of people is like the tip of the iceberg, and then under the water, all of that big dark mass is essentially kind of self-esteem and self-belief and confidence and all these other things going on. And so when anxiety shows up as Tim's having a panic attack and his heart's racing and he's sweating and he's shaking and he's got vertigo, that's the manifestation of a problem somewhere else in your life. So the reason that there's no cure for anxiety is that, the reason that you're having the panic attack is because of something else that's going on. So it's I think of it as disalignment. So for some people, it's the fact that they haven't worked on their confidence, or they're in a relationship which is stressful and not serving them, or they commute a lot and doing a job they hate, or they live in a place they hate. It's just could be one or many things combined. And what we want to do is, because our lives, at least in the Western society, are very comfortable. If we're hungry, we go and get a snack out of the fridge. If we're cold, we turn up the heat. So there's no pain or suffering in our lives. And that's the challenge. When we have anxiety, and we have that panic attack, we're like, I need to be fixed now. Fix me.
Right.
And you go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Take these tablets.
Take the pill. It's like,
take the pills.
Shit. Like, stop the pills. I hated that.
Right.
It was instant relief, and I felt like I needed it. And then I'm like, no, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something else, because that's just masking a symptom.
And I've kind of come a long way around to get to my point of view now. It's still kind of evolving, but I'm against pills. I'm against medication. And I used to say, well, maybe it's all right for some people. Now I just say no. I don't think it is, because I think even if it works for you, even if the pills take the panic away, you're actually bypassing some important work that you need to do in your life. If I could take the magic pill, so to speak, which had no side effects, which kind of don't exist, then I would have probably carried on being the vice president of sales, making the money, being fat and traveling and not connecting with my family ever.
Yeah.
And so I needed the slap around the face. That's why it is a blessing, fucking painful blessing.
Yeah.
But I needed to stop. I need to stop and look at my life and say, what are you doing, Tim? Like, why do you don't need that much money? And the more money you make, by the way, you're spending it all. So
right. Yeah. So it never, you're on that constant treadmill trying to just keep up, and it's not keep up with anybody else. You're just trying to keep up with what your own stupid goals are sometimes, and you have your priorities sometimes set in the wrong spot. What's amazing to me, and I see this through a lot of your writing, and I see this through your podcast as well, and you've said this many times, is that you've turned anxiety into a gift. And while that might sound like to someone that suffers from it like a big shit, like, oh, come on, seriously, how do you turn this horrible thing that you have into your life into a gift? I've actually had people that have entered into my life either through the podcast or my writing or any interviews that I've done that even have turned horrible things like cancer or cystic fibrosis or whatever ailment that they've have into a gift also. But specifically talk about anxiety and why that you think that this is a gift for you. And you just kind of alluded to it a little bit just a moment ago, but talk about that more specifically.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you talk about cancer and heart attacks and that kind of those time sensitive conditions, because it's like people say to you, if you had a year left to live, what would you do? But an anxiety doesn't give you a year left to live. It gives you a lifetime to live still. But people don't treat it with the same level of respect, which I think it deserves. So for me, I think it's a gift because it, first of all, it forced me to look at my life, and I can honestly say I wish I would have become enlightened some other way. But if I hadn't had anxiety, I wouldn't have stopped. Because my wife saying, stay home a bit more, Tim, we never see you, was just being countered by my CEO saying, travel a bit more, Tim, you're really good at talking to people. And so I was being torn. And, it wasn't anybody's fault because I was allowing all this to happen. But the gift was really in the fact that it allowed me to stop. It allowed me to connect. And it allowed me to realize that now anxiety for me is actually a reason to sort of pay attention. It's a barometer of significance. So if I do feel fear, if I feel some anxiety in my life, it allows me to say, right, why is this coming up? This curiosity there for me, and I can get to the bottom of it. I can have a conversation with it. Whereas before, I would just feel the emotion, freak out, and curl up into a ball, basically. So
how help me with some of the mechanisms that you use, some of the behaviors that you use when you feel it coming on. I went to a cognitive behavioral therapist, and we worked very much in the curiosity stage and just kind of wrapping your head around what these feelings are, and doing some meditation, which actually is a huge contributor to my being able to stay a little bit more balanced in my life now. It gives me some patience and ability to just kind of breathe for a couple of moments. Talk about some of the techniques that you might use when you're in the midst of some anxiety or panic in your life, because I'm sure it still comes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I did an interview with Dave Asprey of Bulletproof fame, and he said to me something like, the way he came to terms with his anxiety is he's like, he feels it, but he knows it's not going to kill him. So one of the definitions I use with people is let's delineate between physical anxiety and then emotional anxiety. So physical anxiety is my stomach feels weird, my head feels tight, my breathing's up in my chest. That's the feeling. Now, we can chase that down the rabbit hole and turn it into emotional anxiety and say, right, something bad's going to happen, and go after the what ifs, or we can just recognize it and sit with it and let it kind of pass through us. So curiosity is a beautiful word, and I use something with my clients called the 3 C's. Just because it's nice and easy to remember. And I even get people to write the 3 C's on their wrists some days, just as a reminder. So the first one is curiosity. So like, I wonder what's going on. This is interesting. Why do I feel like this? Because a lot of the time it's being created by, external situations, such as, you're in a job interview, or you're driving in the car, or you're in the supermarket, or something's going on that's triggering you. And so the curiosity is really just to start having a conversation. And that's where people progress from being very anxious to starting to recover, is they're able to interrupt the pattern before they go too far into it.
Right.
Because we have to remember that from like a physiological point of view, it's kicked off by our croc brain. Our amygdala kicks off the panic sensation. And so essentially we feel that before it hits our prefrontal cortex, which is where we interpret it. And
by that time, it's too late, because now you have all that adrenaline is in your system, and you start the clammy hands and the shaking and the heartbeat and all that. And then by that time, it does become a fuckery.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say to people, to put it simply, we feel before we think. We feel before we think. So as long as you can kind of remember that. So the second C then is courage. And courage means it's a bit uncomfortable, but if we try and avoid the discomfort, it makes it worse. So the courage is sitting there, it's feeling the sensations. Before I got on the phone with you today, Doug, I feel a bit of anxiety, and I'm like, good. That means I'm interested. That means I'm engaged. That means I care about what's going to happen. Okay?
Love it.
And the third C stands for compassion, because people with anxiety are fucking hard on themselves all the time because they think they're weak and broken and whatever else rubbish they're telling themselves. So compassion is, this isn't your fault. This is part of the process. You're a human being. And if you just relax and not try and hold on to it quite as tightly, then it's going to dissipate and disappear.
That last one is the one that, as my son would say, that one is the one that got me right in the feels. Because the curiosity I can deal with, and the courage, I feel like I'm strong enough. Entrepreneurs, as many that are listening in our audience are entrepreneurs, they're fucking courageous people to begin with. It's that last one. It's that compassion. It's that trying to, I can feel it right now in myself. I am my worst critic. And we all are. If we were to speak to ourselves or speak to others the way that we speak to ourselves, we would be walking around constantly being beaten up. And we, as a human race, we are so hard on ourselves. And compassion is that area where everybody just let up on yourself just a little bit. Just give yourself a little bit of space. And Tim, help me for a second. If I just give myself a little bit of space, and I'm talking literally 5 seconds, 10 seconds of compassion as I'm going through this initial stage of anxiety, I oftentimes will find that I can completely, diffuse what's going to go on in the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, and the reason that's so important is because, and the compassion piece is so important, is that anxiety is fueled by rejection. If you try and fight it, it gets worse. If you try and avoid it, it reminds you. So the way to moving past anxiety, is moving through it. It's accepting it. It's being at one with it. And the reason that that's the way it is because it's not some, external force. It's part of you. It's part of your emotions. It's part of your sensitivities. So by rejecting it, you're rejecting part of yourself. So as I always say, embrace your anxiety, pick it up, tuck it under your arm, give it a hug, and say, right. I mean, I know this sounds a little bit touchy-feely.
Totally there. There are people that are not as sensitive as you or me, probably, that are listening.
I'm a sensitive guy, so this is just kind of just what comes out of me. But so the bottom line becomes with the compassion pieces that we're saying. What I'm saying is that the part of me which doesn't feel great, I still love it. I still love myself, and I couldn't say that for a long time in my life. But now, even when I'm struggling with something or something hasn't gone particularly well, I just think, overall, I do believe I'm a nice person. I do believe that I'm worthwhile and valuable, and therefore I'm able to be compassionate with myself.
So, Tim, you took this whole incident that happened in your life and this whole condition, this anxiety, and you actually made a career out of it. So you not only wanted to help yourself cope with this, you threw yourself right into the fire. You're like, fuck this. I'm gonna really stay in it all the time now. And it's a constant reminder, at least I can get, when I'm on the podcast, it's like, I don't think about my anxiety. It just, just, if it happens and it comes up, but you actually have forcibly put yourself in an environment where, so you have a blog, you write about anxiety, you have this podcast, you talk about anxiety, and your entire speaking career is about anxiety. Pick one of those three things and just talk about it for a second. Can we talk about the podcast? Cause I love your podcast.
Yeah, so I mean, it all comes from the same place, which is my dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs when it comes to treating. I mean, you could say mental health. I focus on anxiety because, there's so many people in the world that try to generalize on everything, and I'm just laser focused on this because it happened to me. It's personal. I've experienced it, and so that's what I'm focused on. But my mission in the world, to break it down simply, is that the person who wakes up tomorrow and goes to work and has a panic attack because they're trying to do too much in their life and they're running around being so busy they never take a break or meditate or get out in nature or consider what they're eating or spend time with people that they love or whatever it is. And they go to the doctor and the doctor says, absolutely, take these blue tablets for a month and then come and see me. And if they work, I'll give you some more. And if they don't work, I'll put you on some different ones or I'll increase the dose. Like, that is ridiculous to me. And so my mission is that it doesn't have to be me, but somebody in that situation can go on the internet, which we almost all have access to these days, and find a resource which says that isn't the answer and there's another way to do this. And if you go this other route, it's going to change your fucking life in such a meaningful, positive way.
Right.
Because there's work you have to do. The alarm bell's going off. Anxiety is the alarm bell. Something's wrong. Change a little bit, change a lot. But taking pills isn't the solution.
It's so true. It is so true. Pills was not the answer. I found I still was having the same level of anxiety when I was taking the pills. It wasn't until I actually met somebody, my therapist, and went through. I didn't care about your parents left you when your dad left you when you were two. I didn't care about that. I was like, I need fucking fixing right now. And this cognitive behavioral therapist who actually helped me with the behavior, the things, the three, in your particular case, the 3 C's. I mean, those are great. Now, is that stuff that you talk about on your show? Tell me the format of your show. Or I know the format, but tell our audience the format of the show so we can get you some listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So the show is it's got 2 parts to it and 2 episodes a week. So one of them is I interview somebody, and as Tim Ferriss would say, I'm scratching my own itch, and people seem to like that. So part of this is like, how do I improve myself? How did I recover from my own anxiety? So I'm talking to like cognitive behavioral experts. I'm speaking to doctors. I spoke to Dr. Tom O'Brien, who's like a world leader on gluten intolerance and how the inflammation from gluten intolerance affects our brains and Alzheimer's and mental health and all that kind of stuff. Wow. I speak to people about natural movement, so exercising outside. I've spoken to military veterans who have served in wars and they have PTSD, to professional athletes who've had concussions and had anxiety as a result of it. So these people are just like me and you all the way to, people who are in high profile situations. And I love those conversations. The second episode of the week is me basically talking about my life. So as I experience things, as I come across stuff, I relay it. And, the episode that came out this week, for instance, just as a little snippet, I talked about acting like you're never going to leave. And what I mean by that is that I was told a story by a guy once who had to travel around because his dad was actually in the forces. And he said that whenever he moved somewhere, his mum would always bake muffins and go to the neighbor's house and introduce herself and join the women's groups. And he'd say, "Mum, what are you doing? We're only going to be here for a few weeks." And he said, his mum said, "Yeah, but I want to act like we're going to be here forever because that's how we build the best relationships." So I basically took that story and kind of put my own. I always joke that I put it through the anxiety podcast sausage machine.
Yeah.
And I kind of relay it in terms of how it can benefit us in what we're going through. But essentially it's about engagement. It's about walking down the street and looking somebody in the eye and saying, "How you doing?" Let's start engaging with other people.
Well, and the podcast is great. I've only listened to a couple of episodes. And maybe just coincidentally, I only listened to the episodes where it's you, and it's very as a guy that has a co-host. And well, not that you've heard Strickland, but as a guy that's had
he's very quiet. Strickland
he's very quiet today. He's very quiet. When I do the interview shows, it's just me and you. But when I do my Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday shows, I do those with Strick, and we totally understand each other, and we get each other, and we work off of each other's strengths and weaknesses. I would have an impossible time doing a podcast and just telling stories on my own.
Yeah.
I just think that there more power to you if you're able to actually format and run a successful show that way. And your show is very successful. I've heard about it through a number of different sources as well. Can we talk for just a moment? Because in addition to you being a person that has a blog and a podcast and you speak about anxiety, you're also a business owner. And since we're dealing primarily in our audience with people that are entrepreneurs, I want to share a little bit with them about the effectiveness and how you run your business. So can I ask you, it's called the rapid fire round. It's just 5 questions, real easy questions, but I would love to know your spin. And if you take off your guy that writes a blog, speaks, and podcasts for a moment hat and put on your business owner hat so that you can talk to us as a business owner for a second. Is that cool?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, great. So each one of these 5 questions, real easy, but and I'm going to try not to step on you, although I completely mess this up all the time, and I end up putting in my 2 cents. 20 seconds or less if you can spend just answering each one of these so we can make it real precise. Be relatable, Tim. What do you suck at?
Trying to do too much. I actually don't do too much because I've focused on the podcast and I've focused on anxiety, but literally once a week I'm like, I should start a YouTube channel. I should talk about depression. So for me, it's like, focus, man, stick on it. And over a long enough amount of time, that compounds massively.
No, I completely agree with that. Nice one. Be transparent. When you first got going, how did you pay your bills?
So I negotiated my way very well out of my other job. I got paid for some time after I left, and I also did some investing in real estate just to give myself a bit of a bridge between getting the new stuff off the ground. Okay, good. Be confident. What do you do as an entrepreneur that's as good as it gets? Speak the truth. Nice. Oh, that's how essential is that, do you think? I think that's the whole reason why everything I do is resonates with people, because they know that it's just what I believe in. Agreed. Be humble. What experts do you need to call upon to make shit happen when shit doesn't happen? I have a mentor myself who I work with, and so I'm regularly asking for help about direction, about what I should do more of, what I should do less of. Yeah, I think that as somebody smart said, I don't know who said it, but you can only go as deep as you've been yourself. Good one. And be realistic. Where do you think you're going to be in about 90 days, and how far into the future do you think that you can actually see? I don't look super far into the future, but 90 days, the book I've written is up for sale. I'm doing my first retreat, the Less Anxiety, More Life retreat. So those 2 things will be out there in the world. Nice. Do you have your cell phone anywhere near you? Not right now. It's switched off because I'm talking to you.
Do you have an iPhone or something inferior?
I have an iPhone.
Okay, good. So you probably can't even answer the next question. Like, what's the last picture you took? You're not able to do that.
I do know what it is. Before I got on this call, I went and set up my little diffuser, and I put some patchouli and some cedarwood in it, and I took a pic of that for Instagram. So
nice.
Yeah.
Do you and this is just off the topic here, but do you meditate?
Yes, I do.
And what's your practice look like? Is it a couple times a day? Is it once a day? How long do you spend?
I have like what I call two meditations. The first one is what you would class as real meditation. So I do normally a 10-minute guided meditation because I need some structure around it. Mm-hmm. And my second meditation for me is working out. I get very that's when I kind of let go of my thoughts and just focus on the exercise and just kind of be at peace with that. It feels very meditative to me.
Perfect. Love it. How can our listeners, our Nice Guy community, get in touch with you if they want more information about what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, so if you just go to anxietypodcast.com, that will take you to my website. You can look at my coaching. If you're struggling with anxiety and you want to jump on the phone and have a chat, I do that with people all the time. You can look at the podcast through there. You can look at my journal and retreat and all the variety of stuff I've got related to anxiety. And then if you're on social media, if you just search The Anxiety Podcast in iTunes, you'll find me. And then on social media, it's Tim J for James, P for Peter Collins, Tim JP Collins. And you can friend me and high five me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and see, my efforts at trying to put amusing things on there, which probably I only think are funny. But
yeah, you got a lot of people following you. So people do think you're funny. And you actually are. I've like I said, I've listened to your podcast and read your stuff. And you definitely speak your mind, and you have a good way to do it. Also, it's a very good voice. I enjoy listening and reading your voice as well.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. So, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Special thanks to Tim J.P. Collins for being a part of the show today. All his information. We're going to do a better job at this. I really suck at show notes, and I'm really sorry. Anna does our show notes, Tim, just so you're aware. So if there's any mess ups, it's not Anna's fault. It's completely my fault because I have not given her the right information. So happy Anna, sad Doug. I'm going to work on it. I know I am. So thank you so much again, Tim, for being a part of the show. And Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Seriously, it'll only hurt for a minute. And don't worry, I'll be fine.